everyone, welcome to another video. Now I know I said in the last video that this one would be our final one on film posters, but having prepped it, it's going to actually be split into 3 different videos, and you'll see why as we go through. I'm going to try and get them all up either on the same day as each other or within a day or 2 of each other, so that you guys are not having to wait for Luther, because I know that's the big topic that everybody wants me to cover and that I will be getting into sort of next week. Before we get started though, a few shout outs today. So shout out to Morgan, to GCSE, Noel, to the default, to Zach, and also to Mexa as well. Today we're going to be looking at exam questions. These exam questions have been taken from the sample assessment materials that are on the Educast website. You guys can access those, so I'm going to link that down below in the description box. Obviously these aren't based on film posters, but it's useful to have a look at them, to have a go at answering them, and also adapt them so that you can practice the sorts of things that you might get asked for each individual topic. So for us, what we're going to be doing is looking at how the film poster for The Man with the Golden Gun uses images, language, layout and design to create meanings. We're then going to explore how historical context influences film posters referring to The Man with the Golden Gun to support our points. And we're going to compare the representation of genres in The Man with the Golden Gun film poster and the film poster to Jaws. So you can see how the questions on the left match the questions on the right. All I've done is change initially the text that we're looking at from Quality Street to The Man with the Golden Gun, or changed the focus of the question, for instance, from social context to historical context and from women to genre. You can practice this yourself, and another thing that you can practice is picking alternative products to compare to the ones that you are going to be studying. So I've picked Jaws to compare to The Man with the Golden Gun because they're both produced at very similar time and have similar genres, but are obviously very different stylistically. You could compare The Man with the Golden Gun to a modern poster. You could compare it to just a completely random poster, perhaps a comedy or something like that. So there's loads that you can do to help prepare yourselves and to practice at home. To get started then, we're going to have a look at question 1. So we are focusing on different elements of the poster and thinking about what that might suggest. Now in the mark scheme, as I've shown you guys before, there is very little difference between band 1 and band 5. The difference occurs in the wording. So whether you give a minimal explanation or an excellent explanation. So it's all down to you guys basically. If you give basic answers, you're going to get basic marks. If you give excellent answers, you're going to get excellent marks. And to an extent that's the level of detail that you give. You know, there are some students, I'm sure, in every class, and it might even be you that I'm talking to, who will write the bare minimum for a 5-mark question. You know that's not going to get you the highest marks. So we have to start thinking about how we can help ourselves, particularly given that your exams are less than sort of 4 months away from starting. So how do we do this then? Well, first of all, you need to understand what the question is asking. We're being asked to explore, which means that we need to consider a range of different points, and we're focusing on that media language, specifically images. So in terms of The Man with the Golden Gun, we're probably going to want to have a look at these: Bond, the women, the gun itself, and then some of the explosions that are happening along that left-hand side. Language. Now they actually changed the way that this question was worded in the exam last year. So instead of just being language, it actually said text/written language, because what they want you to do is to focus on individual words and phrases, much the same as an English exam, whereby we would comment on perhaps Roger Moore, Bond, the word man or the word golden, and think about what those might suggest. And then the layout and design, so the overall look and feel of this particular poster. So for images, this is a sample answer for you. The film poster is made up almost entirely of images, the predominant image being that of the golden gun, which provides anchorage with the title. It also provides a level of enigma and audience connection, as the point of view angle makes it appear like the audience are the ones holding the gun, and in terms of narrative are unaware who this antagonist may be. Further images include Bond, who is presented as the protagonist given his stance in the centre of the page, and the fact that the other images and action happen around him. He's clearly shown as the hero of the film, which the demographic may already be aware of, and is surrounded by stereotypical Bond girls who are beautiful and key to the narrative, something that is an established part of the franchise as a whole. Now, you're only really in your exam going to have, I think we counted in my class, about 13 lines to write an answer for this particular question, because you'll get an answer booklet and you'll have each individual part of this question printed separately with space for you to answer. So use those lines as a guidance for how much you should be writing. It might be that you can't get all of the points that I've put in here detailed on your page, but you should be looking to make a range of points, and also using your terminology. If you can fit in some theory as well, like I've done with hero, then that's fantastic, but it's not altogether necessary for this question. It's also worth pointing out, and this is something that I learned fairly recently, that you don't have to be specific in terms of saying, for example, he is clearly shown as the hero as suggested by props theory. You don't have to name the theory all the time. If it's obvious what you mean, then the examiner will pick up on that. What sort of mark would this get then? Well, this is the top part of the mark scheme. And you guys can, comment in the comment section below what you think I would get. But personally, I feel like, yes, I have given an excellent detailed analysis of the use of media language. And I also feel like I have given consistent focus on connotations or those intended meanings. However, what I'm not going to do is mark both language and layout and design, which is coming up. So you guys can pop down in the comments section below what you think I would achieve for each of these. So in terms of language, one of the main pieces of language on the poster comes from the title. The use of the adjective golden connotes that the gun is precious, which is unusual given that it's clearly being used to attack Bond. It is a clear indication of the wealth prevalent in the Bond franchise as a whole. Combined with this, the noun man, which provides a high level of enigma, as the figure is clearly the antagonist or villain of the piece, is not revealed on the poster. Finally, the actor Roger Moore acts as a USP for the production, as he would draw in his own audience, which is why it's placed centrally in an uncluttered part of the poster in order to catch the eye. So comment in the comment section below what you think I would get for this paragraph. And layout and design then. The layout of the poster is reflective of the time that it was produced, as many of the images come directly from the film and act as stills to reveal the narrative. The poster can almost be split into 3 sections, with the centre requiring the audience to pick apart the different elements of the narrative. For example, the women featured within the poster provide different readings, the preferred being that they are Bond's love interests. However, a negotiated reading would suggest that the blonde is protecting Bond, given her body language, while the brunette is signalling to the unknown antagonist to shoot Bond. There are also clear indications of the genre shown throughout the explosion in the power plant and the car flying off the ramp on the left-hand side. These are expected conventions of the genre and franchise, but are key to drawing in both an established and a new audience. So again, comment in the comment section below what you think I would get for each of these particular answers. And let's have a look at question 2. So question 2 focuses on representation. 2A is specifically considering context, and it's pretty much the only question in the 2 papers that will ask for context explicitly. So we need to explain how historical context influences film posters, and we've got to refer to the Man with the Golden Gun film poster to support our points. Now, the easiest way I can think of to explain this, and it's the way I explain it to all of my classes, is that you have to think broadly. The question is asking how historical context influences posters. That's the question part of the statement we have in front of us. The Man with the Golden Gun poster is only meant to be there as evidence. So you're meant to show your understanding of this industry as a whole by using the Golden Gun poster as examples, but thinking about that historical context as the main focus of this question. So you can see in the little plan that I'm going to start below, some ideas for how historical context influences posters, obviously through events happening at the time. Whatever's going on at the time of production is going to feature within the film and within the poster itself. So that's one way that context influences our product. Another way is through treatment of gender. And in my class today, we also discussed the fact that it's not just treatment of gender, but it's also sort of the level of power that different people have at the time is going to be reflected in this poster. So Bond is more dominant than women, but he's also more dominant as a white British male compared to the martial artists, for example. And talking of the martial artists, things that are popular at the time in terms of history and how popular things were, that's also going to appear in this sort of historical context part. That's also going to appear in our poster as well. So again, how are we being marked for this? What should we be mentioning? It's a very similar mark scheme to what we've had in question 1. Again, we've got those same differences in terms of criteria. So if you're giving an excellent example of historical context, you're going to get excellent marks. If you're only giving a basic knowledge, or you're only showing a basic knowledge, you're only going to get basic marks. And what should this look like? You get slightly more space for this, but only by a couple of lines. So I think you get about 17 lines for this. We genuinely did count in my media lesson. I just can't remember which way round they were. So you get somewhere between sort of 13 and 17 lines for question 1A, B, C and 2A. So let's have a look at this then. The biggest way that historical context influences film posters is through what events are happening at the time. Large events within history are likely to make their way into the narratives of the film. So you can see how I'm talking generally and quite broadly about historical context. Now let's bring in that evidence. For example, in The Man with the Golden Gun, the explosion within the power plant is reflective of the 1973 energy crisis that was happening at the time. This would have been included not only as it was a large talking point among audiences, but also because it would increase demographics by playing on their fears, as they would want to see how the crisis is resolved in the film to feel more secure about it in real life. Another way that historical context influences posters is through representations of power at the time. Although a feminist movement had taken place during the 70s, women were still considered less powerful than men. This can be seen in The Man with the Golden Gun poster, as the female characters are all smaller than Bond and are sexualised through their dress codes. Furthermore, the trends that were popular at the time would also feature in products of the period. This can be seen through the martial artists in the centre of the poster, who are representative of the rising popularity of kung fu films of the 70s. So hopefully that makes sense. You can see how I'm talking broadly about this historical context, but using The Man with the Golden Gun as evidence, just as the question is asking. Now again, you can pop down in the comment section below what you think I'm going to get, so pause the video now, comment below. Personally, again, I think that I have given an excellent and detailed knowledge of historical context, and I think I've given appropriate references to The Man with the Golden Gun. Okay, question 2B. This question is crucial. You have to nail this question. If you don't nail this question, it doesn't really matter how well you do on the other parts of this paper, because this is the biggest question you will answer across both media papers. This is worth more marks than any other question that we have come across in paper 1 or paper 2 of the sample materials, of other materials that are out there, sample questions, and also of the exam last year. So this is really, really important. And this question is why paper 1 is worth more marks than paper 2. So you have to do well on paper 1 to get a good mark overall in your answer, okay, or in your GCSEs. So how do we go about doing this then? How do we nail this question? What do we need to do? First of all, we need to understand what it's asking, okay? So we are being asked to compare. That means we have to look at similarities and differences, and I'll come on to that again in a minute. We're also considering representation. So we can bring in details of context, we can bring in details of industry and audience, but if we're not mentioning representation, if we're just blindly listing everything we know about The Man with the Golden Gun, we are not going to get the marks. We also have to make sure that our answer focuses on genre. Again, we're not being asked to compare everything on one poster to everything on another. You're given a specific focus, in this instance, genre. Now you're also given 3 bullet points, and the exam boards don't include bullet points for no reason. These are there as a prompt to get you started, and this is also what they want to be seeing in your answer. So we need to think about the choices that have been made, the methods that are being used, and as we can see below, we need to comment on the similarities and the differences. If you only cover one of those, you are not going to get very many marks. In fact, you will limit yourself to half the marks as a maximum. Likewise, if you only talk about one of the products, if you only talk about the man with the golden gun and you don't bring in Jaws, you will be limiting yourself in terms of the marks that you will be allowed. Now, I always tell my classes that it's really useful to plan for this question. It's worth 25 marks. Your English answers in your English GCSEs are worth like 24, 30 marks, and you would plan for those. So plan for this as well. And I obviously like my spider diagrams, but it's up to you how you want to plan. If you've got one of those pens that's sort of like a multicolour pen, I find those quite useful here, because what you can do is do your similarities in one colour. For instance, I've said that there's a similar level of peril in these posters to represent that action genre, and that also the representation of women is very similar, because we would expect women to be damsels in distress within the action genre as well. And then you can change the colour of your pen to do differences. So in this case, we'd be looking at the level of detail that's included, because we want to raise the enigma or reveal the narrative, and the level of establishment in the franchise or subgenres. Personally, I think 4 points are an excellent number of points to have to go with this question. You might not get all 4 done, so aim for at least 3, leave that 4th one that you're not necessarily all that sure about till the end in case you've got that extra time left, but try and do those 3 justice when you've got them. And it doesn't matter whether you do 2 similarities and 1 difference or the other way around, as long as you've mentioned a similarity, a difference, anything else from that is fine, because you'll have dealt with both parts of the sort of question, the bullet points. And the mark scheme for this, obviously, because you have more marks available, is going to be more complex. We still have those differences in language. Okay, so again, basic analysis, basic use of terminology, basic judgment will only get you basic marks. If you give a reasonably detailed analysis, then you're going to move up the mark scheme. If you show excellent knowledge of key terms, you're going to move up that mark scheme. It really is as simple as that, guys. And what should this look like then? So this is quite small, obviously, because I've had to try and write out the whole 25 mark question as we've got here. You will be given sort of 2, 3, maybe even 4 sides for this question. You will have spare paper at the back of your booklet as well, in case you need more space because you've got larger handwriting or you're just on a roll. So don't worry about that. You will also, for your year, and this is so important for you guys to remember, you have it so much easier than the previous year 11s did. You will be given both of the products on plain paper so that you can annotate them if you want to. You'll get like an insert with all of the products that you need for the exam printed out on paper so you can annotate them. And you are allowed to highlight, underline, annotate anything that is printed. So all of the questions you can highlight, all of the questions you can underline. The only thing you're not allowed to colour or highlight is your own writing. I really have to stress that, because so many students that I see and that I've experienced within our mock exams have found that, you know, they're told that they're not allowed to do it by invigilators, or that they felt like they couldn't do it. You can. If it is printed, then you can. The only thing you're not allowed to highlight is your own work. So here we go. Both posters have similar genres of action and adventure. The way that these genres are represented is similar in some ways. For example, both posters use the recognised convention of peril to increase the suspense and draw to the production. Within The Man with the Golden Gun, this comes across through the obvious danger that Bond is in from the anchored image of the gun. The obviousness is also illustrated in Jaws, where the antagonist, in this case the shark, is also large image on the page in comparison to its prey, which is very small. Other levels of similarity come from the way that people, in both cases women, are represented. On the Bond poster, this is something expected from the franchise as a whole, given that there is an established archetype of Bond girl that the primary demographic, who are male, would expect to see. They are overly sexualised and are represented as being inferior to Bond through the fact that they are much smaller, and in all the films are at most a sidekick to Bond, possibly given that they are often his prize for completing a mission. Even though the female on the Jaws poster is presented as being inferior and is in a similar position of needing to be rescued, there are also differences in that here the woman is representative of man as a whole, as the connotations are clearly that this narrative will be a battle between nature and man. However, there are a number of differences within the production, the main one being the level of enigma that is used. Despite the fact that both productions use enigma, they hide different parts of the narrative. Within The Man with the Golden Gun, there is a mysterious antagonist only referred to as a man, while the villain in Jaws can clearly be seen through the fact that the shark's jaws are in the centre of the page and made a focal point. However, Jaws also shows little about the narrative other than that it will revolve around a well-established opposition of good and evil. In the Bond poster, though, several narrative elements are illustrated on the poster, given that there are exact stills from the production revealing car chases and explosions. Overall, I believe that although both posters show genre and expected conventions of action, there are more differences between the posters. It's obvious there is more content to the Bond poster, and the decision to make Jaws so sparse creates a higher level of suspense and worry about the narrative and characters, which is more likely to increase audiences through the social talking point and increase demographics through the hype created. So, lots of key terms. Some reference to theory, and you can comment down below which theories you think I've mentioned, because again, you don't have to refer to them by name if you make them obvious. I've detailed similarities and differences, and again, one of the things I learned from last year is that you do need a paragraph at the end where you give some judgment, where you explain that extent. How far do you think? Okay, and so I've included that at the bottom. I'm not going to give myself a mark for this. I'm going to let you guys do that in the comments section below. But I believe that I have given an excellent and detailed analysis. I think that I have given appropriate comparisons, but I'm happy to be contradicted if you guys disagree. And I also think I've given some well-reasoned judgment at the end. So you guys decide on my mark for me. Feel free to argue back if you are not sure whether I have done something to the extent that you think I should. And let me know in the comments section below. We have quite a few key terms today because I've done answers for this. So what I would suggest is that you have a go at doing the questions yourselves and then go back through and see where you could have fit in some of these different key terms. Alternatively, highlight them in your own work so that you can see which ones you're using regularly and which ones you need to revise. I hope that was really useful. If you haven't, please subscribe, hit the button down below, because obviously I'm going to do the same thing for Spectre, and then I'll be looking at the section B questions as well. You can get in touch with me through Twitter at media_revision, or pop those comments in the comments section below so that I know whether you need a shout out, what mark you think I would get, and if you have any requests